All right, well, for more on this, let's bring in CNN legal and national security analyst Carrie Cordero. Carrie, what is your reaction to the National Guard deployment?
Well, this is a scenario that actually, Pam, in my work at the Center for New American Security, we previewed in some work that we did last year in a report that we put out, where this potential collision between authorities of the president and authorities of a governor could potentially play out in a protest-type scenario. The governor has now said that he is going to litigate, and I think that is because in this particular situation, the president has not invoked the Insurrection Act, which then would place the National Guard under his authority, and instead he has relied on a lesser used protective authority argument, and so that provides an opportunity for the state to litigate. But at the same time, even if there is protracted litigation, which now could take place between the governor of California and the president, that doesn't solve the current urgent issue, which is number one, how to bring public safety to these isolated incidents where there is violence, and two, avoid any dispute between the authorities of the president over the National Guard and the governor over the National Guard.
And in terms of the National Guard, Governor Newsom says he's going to file a lawsuit against the Trump administration. Do you think that Newsom will prevail on that front?
Well, again, I think it's an area that is going to be really untested. And so because the president did not invoke the Insurrection Act, as Jeff mentioned in his report, there is a historical precedent for a president to use National Guard, but it was in the context of the Civil Rights era. So both in the 1950s and in the 1960s, presidents federalized the National Guard in order to enforce the civil rights laws. A seminal moment in that was in the 1950s when the president authorized to actually enforce Brown versus Board of Education. So this is a different situation with a different factual scenario. There is actually, Pam, a graceful way that the president and the governor could avoid that type of constitutional showdown, and that would be for the president to not continue with his federalization of the National Guard, but actually enable the governor to retain his command and control over the National Guard, but perform this federal mission. And that would be a thing that would currently be understood legal frameworks for using the National Guard.
And you mentioned the Insurrection Act. The president has not ruled out invoking it. How would that change what we're seeing play out now?
From a legal perspective, that would be a more clear path for the National Guard to operate under federal authority. So I think that would place us back into what is a more understood legal framework, because that act is an act passed by Congress, actually, of course, and is a recognized authority for the president to be able to be used. And so I think he'll hold that out. However, the factual scenario needs to match the invocation of using the Insurrection Act. So based on the reporting that is coming out of LA so far, including the interview that was just conducted with the mayor of LA, it doesn't sound to me at this point that the factual scenario on the ground would justify the use of the Insurrection Act.
All right, I want to pivot to the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is back in the U.S., but now facing federal criminal charges, including allegations that he conspired to transport thousands of undocumented migrants as far back as 2016. Does anything stand out to you from these latest developments?
So on one hand, there is what I will characterize as a positive development from my perspective, which is that he is out of a foreign prison and he is now into a system of legal process. One can argue whether or not the administration and the Justice Department is using these charges to simply keep him detained, but at least he is no longer in the custody of a foreign government after a removal from the United States that even by the government's admission was not proper. And so we now actually have him back into the U.S. legal system. So I see that as a positive. At the same time, these are pretty significant charges that have been brought against him. And so this now will take place in a much longer criminal legal proceeding against him.
And it was interesting because when he was first released, it was during Trump's first term, right? And at that point, officials in Trump's administration did not challenge his release. And now this is playing out. So that is worth noting. Carrie Cordero, thank you so much.
Thanks, Pam.